want to welcome everyone, and I want to tell you I'm just so delighted that you've tuned in for Hawthorn University's All About Alumni. And I see that we have a number of new people with us today, so I want to let you know if you're listening for the first time that All About Alumni is a platform that showcases Hawthorn graduates, and they share their post-grad activities and accomplishments. The many ways they're using their Hawthorn education in their practices is nothing short of amazing. We have a variety of nationally accredited degree and certificate programs at Hawthorn, and some of them are for people that are pursuing a clinical track with the goal of working directly with clients. And then there's other programs that are dedicated to those that are seeking to primarily educate, such as writing books or develop courses, workshop programs, or public speaking, teaching for a school, etc. And then we have other programs as well that are for those who simply want to learn valuable, credible information in a conducive environment. The success of our students is truly a testament of Hawthorn's mission and principles to provide quality, affordable, holistic health and nutrition education. Regardless, we all love to learn more at Hawthorn. That said, I'm your host, Paula Bartholomew. I'm one of the founders of Hawthorn, and it's such a privilege to speak with and feature our graduates. So let's get started here, because today we're featuring Hawthorn alumni Dr. Sheila Dean, who holds the distinction actually of being our first graduate from our doctoral program, and she's going to be sharing her 50-year journey. Sheila is going to reveal a serendipitous journey here as she shares her background and how she became drawn to holistic health and nutrition, both personally and professionally. She'll also speak to her educational journey, detailing her experience inside Hawthorn's doctoral program, and then she'll dive deep into the amazing work and opportunities she has accomplished post-graduation. And while I have the pleasure of conversing with Sheila, you certainly have the opportunity to ask her questions directly too. So I don't want you to hold back. Simply post a question or any comment to the question panel that's on your webinar control screen. And to let you know that we're recording this and we'll post this to our website, and you'll find it under archived webinars from our website in just a few days. There's also a very brief survey that you'll find as soon as this presentation ends, and we would love it if you would provide some feedback and offer your comments on this presentation, on Sheila's work and accomplishments, and anything else you'd like to share with us. All right, all that said, I want to say, Sheila, welcome. It's so delighted to have you here.
Oh gosh, Paula, thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. I am really actually excited and honored that for the invitation to be here with you all and share a little bit about myself and my experience. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's really my pleasure and honor to be able to introduce you and have you share much of your post-grad activities. So let me get right into that. Dr. Sheila is a registered and licensed dietitian, nutritionist, and board-certified integrative and functional medicine practitioner. She was the owner of Palm Harbor Center for Health and Healing, an integrative and functional medicine-based private practice and wellness center that was in Palm Harbor, Florida. She did that for 17 years. She's a published author, a national speaker, and media spokesperson. Dr. Dean has taught nutrition science for over 21 years as adjunct professor at the University of Tampa, University of South Florida Morsani School of Medicine, Maryland University at Integrative Health, Schiller International University, Saybrook University, and St. Petersburg College. She's also the co-founder of IFNA, that's the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy. It's a comprehensive online training and mentoring program. It's designed to teach healthcare practitioners how to seek the true root causes of disease in order to be able to restore optimal health and function, and then ultimately transform the practices of nutrition using the most effective, integrative, and functional nutrition diagnostic tools, treatment protocols for preventing and reversing chronic illness. So we're really pleased that you've joined us to hear Sheila's journey. Sheila, are you ready to share it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that introduction again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So why don't we start with at the beginning? Let's hear a little bit about your background growing up.
Sure. Well, when I was thinking about this presentation, I thought, well, let's just start at the very beginning, right? Who am I? Well, I am the daughter, as I have some of this out here for you. I am the daughter of Middle Eastern immigrants who came to the U.S. in the mid-'60s. I was born in Jamaica Hospital in New York City, and as a kid, I thought that I was Jamaican. When people ask me, as a little kid, it was kind of funny. When I was very young, my mother encouraged me to eat my soup because there were soldiers in the soup that kill microbes. Those were her exact words. I remember that to this
That's an
day.
imprint for sure.
Yes, right. And so dutifully, I ate my soup. And in my mind's eye, I actually imagined these British redcoat soldiers swishing around in my veins that were killing the bad guys, or these microbes, as my mother would say. My father was always coming up with these odd nutritional concoctions that we experimented with quite a bit. My dad, he'd make us these drinks, all sorts of weird smoothies and such. But I do remember that they always tasted really good, and so we'd look forward to that, especially on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
By my teen years, I used to hang out in health food stores trying to figure out what all the various vitamin and herbs were about. I remember wondering what bee pollen was. And I remember keeping a little file in my closet in my bedroom, and occasionally I'd look through the articles that I had collected, trying to understand what all this nutrition information meant. So it went back a long way, a long time ago. I was married engaged by 18 and married at the young age of 19 years old, and attended Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey, where I first learned that you could actually major in food and nutrition. I did not know that. My father was an accountant, and so I thought I was going to be a business major. But when I got to Rutgers, I discovered I was actually able to major in nutrition, and I was absolutely thrilled and knew immediately that I was going to make that my career. So it wasn't something that I planned. I sort of bumped into the program by accident, and that's what started me on what I call my serendipitous journey.
It's beautiful initial part of this share, and it's a testament to that you're on your path, and that path was laid out for you very, very early. So your education, look at this. You've had extensive education, so I sure want to hear more about that part of your journey.
Sure. Well, this is just like a little mini resume I just put out there so you can kind of get an idea of it was a pretty traditional path with my bachelor's and then eventually a master's. And along the way, I became a dietitian, and then in the state of Florida, we do have licensure. It wasn't until 15 years later that I finally was able to go back for my doctorate, and I'll tell you more a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. And along the way, becoming a diabetes educator, a CCN, and then eventually also becoming certified with the Institute for Functional Medicine. But if I may, I would like to share with you a little journey, a little story about my journey, and how this kind of, what happened was, so around the year 2000, right, like 20 years ago, I was what I considered a conventionally trained dietitian and diabetes educator. And as an educator and nutrition counselor, I worked in conjunction with an endocrinologist to support patients with type 1, type 2 diabetes and managing their symptoms. It was fairly traditional work within the limits of the standard of care at that time. And in addition, I had a small private practice on the side using pretty common conventional tools in my toolkit at the time, right? So tools like carb counting, food exchanges, calorie counts, reduced fat diets. And, one day, in the early 2000s, I was lamenting at how unfulfilling my career felt and how my lack of satisfaction with my career was becoming really palpable. And I remember asking myself, Paula, is this really all there is?
Sure.
Did I go through all of this work, 4 years of rigorous undergraduate training, my clinical internship, taking my national boards, just to come up with these, simple meal plans? Because if that was all there was to the field of nutrition, I was seriously considering moving on. I was contemplating a career change. But around the same time, I began to hear the rumblings of a relatively new term, functional medicine.
Yes.
When a fellow dietitian made me aware of these various functional medicine courses and conferences. And at the time, the cost was staggering for me. But eventually, I took that leap of faith. And in September of 2001, I finally began my new educational process, and it was truly what transformed my entire practice and career. This whole new world opened up to me regarding these scientifically supported methods for truly preventing and healing patients with chronic disease, as opposed to just, merely managing their symptoms. And all these cases that were coming my way of people with these conditions that I really wouldn't have known how to handle otherwise were suddenly turning into these success stories. People with intestinal problems, brain fog, fibromyalgia, people with multiple autoimmune conditions, thyroid conditions, hormone imbalances. And the more I implemented the tools that I was learning as a functional medicine dietitian, the more I found myself actually healing my patients. And I think there was a time where I was afraid to use the term heal, or dare I say cure.
Right.
But once I saw the power of functional nutrition in action, I knew that was it. I knew I needed to learn as much as I could. And now, of course, getting the word out to as many nutrition professionals has really become my goal. And in the meantime, I met many new movers and shakers along the way as I needed to. I attended more conferences, and it was a lengthy conversation with Dr. Liz Lipsky that inspired me to go back and earn my doctorate degree at Hawthorn University, which is something I'd really always wanted to do. Earn a doctorate degree since I was a kid, and I remember this so clearly. So I went back to school for my doctorate degree, and it was like taking a plant in a pot and replanting it into a much bigger pot. Everything related to my professional life almost immediately expanded. It exploded. So suffice it to say, my career was really immediately reinvigorated with all this amazing new information and these new realms of understanding and practice that really set me on this course of lifelong learning using these evidence-based systems biology approaches, with nutrition being the central focus for treatment and cure. And of course, ultimately, I could see my practice becoming completely transformed and infused with this amazing new sense of energy. So again, I thank you, Paula, and Hawthorn University for inviting me to participate in this All About Alumni webinar presentation. And it's my hope that I can inspire some of you out there today listening, perhaps by just learning a little bit about my own personal journey. And of course, you're welcome to any of you are welcome to reach out at me if you'd like to connect on a more personal level. I put my contact information on the very last slide.
Beautiful. It's such a great story. It's such a great segue from I'm dissatisfied because my dream, my vision is nothing like what is being played out here. And suddenly the whole functional world of nutrition and integrative health opens up. And yeah, big hat tip to Dr. Elizabeth Lipsky there. She has she was the director of our doctoral program at the time, and
that's right.
She has influenced a number of people along a true healthy path of education and learning and practices. So
right.
thank
And
you, Dr.
it was coincidence that it was a coincidence that I happened to work at a clinic where, of all the dietitians I worked with, the gal that I was working with happened to have a little bit of a background in functional medicine, because her mother was sort of a follower of functional medicine from the 70s, back when they called it, I think, nutritional medicine. And then it was another coincidence that I just kind of bumped into Liz, and we had dinner that night, which we weren't even scheduled to have dinner that night. And she told me about Hawthorn, and then everything else, the rest is history.
It is. Well, we'll talk about the rest is history. Here you
Yes.
are now. You're the co-founder of an online training program. And so I think it's a good time to hear more about that. I just want to say it's such an excellent model for the healthcare professionals. So let you share some of that now, Sheila.
Sure. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so yes, currently I am the co-founder of the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, which we affectionately refer to as IFNA. So you might hear me call it IFNA. So IFNA is basically, it's a comprehensive online training and mentoring program that leads to an advanced practice credential, which is called the NCP, or the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Certified Practitioner. It's designed to teach healthcare practitioners how to seek, as you mentioned earlier when you were talking about my bio, how to seek true root causes of disease to restore optimal health and function, and really ultimately to transform the practice of nutrition. I did want to mention that we are accredited providers of CEUs for dietitians in the US, and now more recently accredited providers of CEUs for the American Holistic Nurses Association.
You're changing the world.
We are. We're trying. This is our 6th year, so you know we've been around for a little while now, and it's been awesome.
You know, you're offering health professionals the path that they hadn't found before. So just like Hawthorn.
That's right. That's right. Right. And you know, a central theme of IFNA training is learning to identify root causes, as we mentioned, of disease, but it's in a methodical and systematic fashion rather than just this mundane prescription of medical nutrition protocols based on a diagnosis. So this really does require a deep understanding of function, right? Not just pathology, networks of physiology, not just silo organ systems, and an organized, integrated nutrition assessment. So our goal is that the IFNA trained clinician is able to critically assess a patient using a whole systems approach and personalize a holistic nutrition care plan to restore function and improve outcome. And here you can see, you know, the various areas that each of our modules cover.
Certainly. Beautiful.
Yeah. And this is my business partner, my dear friend, my colleague, Kathy Swift, who is also the co-founder of IFNA and someone I've known for many years and I work with on a daily basis.
Lucky you. Lucky you.
She's lovely. She's lovely. No, she's been amazing to work with, and it's really been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. So.
I know that you were in private practice for almost 20 years, and I'm interested in knowing what that experience has been like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I mean, it was really just a side thing from 96 to 2000 because my children were so small. I was having children, but by 2000, I was practically almost full time, and so I started the practice around 97, eventually retired the practice in March of 2017, and this is a picture of one of my offices for the Palm Harbor Center for Health and Healing. It was really an extraordinary experience, and yeah.
I think back on slide 3, you had indicated that you were a certified diabetes educator, right?
Yes.
So, you know, you shared a little bit about the challenges in that, but what was it like working with diabetes at that time, and how's it changed, perhaps?
Yes. Well, when I first started, I was working with, well, gosh, come to think of it, it was really actually with Duke that I really first started working more clinically, more with patients with diabetes. Eventually moved on to the Joslin Diabetes Clinic here in Florida. And that's really, the Joslin Center is where I really started working intensively with patients with not just type 2, but type 1 diabetes, gestational diabetes, which of course is diabetes during pregnancy, and what we call LADA, latent adult diabetes or autoimmune diabetes in adults. And also referred to as 1.5. But yes, I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of diabetes and endocrinology disorders clinic. I became a CDE, a certified diabetes educator, and I did maintain the credential for about 15 years. And it was what I really learned was that the information that I learned as a dietitian was great baseline information, but until I became a diabetes educator and then really worked one-on-one with patients with these various forms of diabetes, that and insulin and medications and of course diet and all the different components of this disease, that's really where I learned the ins and outs of diabetes.
We're seeing such an explosion of health concern issues, but diabetes is a mountain what we're facing. And so I'm so grateful for the way you're working with it now.
Well, and one thing that I learned that I think is a really important message to get out there to students and healthcare professionals is that, the pathophysiology behind diabetes really is a continuum. And by the time the patient has type 2 diabetes, there's a lot of disturbances metabolically that have already taken place. I mean, really one of the first steps in this continuum in terms of pathophysiology is hyperinsulinemia. So the patient could actually have a normal blood sugar, but be hyperinsulinemic. And if we as clinicians are not checking based on symptomology, that may just kind of never get caught. I mean, that just might slip right under the radar, and that would be a shame, because the next step in all this is that it gets so bad, the metabolic disturbances become so bad that now their blood sugar is no longer normal, and now they're slipping into borderline diabetes, but which we think of as something that's fairly mild, but actually you're much further along this continuum. And then of course by the time you have full-blown type 2, you've had metabolic disturbances taking place for some time that you may not even be aware of. And this is the beauty of what we do with holistic nutrition, is we're able to catch this so much earlier. And believe me, and I'm sure a lot of those out there listening probably appreciate that it's a lot easier to reverse and a lot cheaper to reverse at that point on the continuum than by the time a person has full-blown diabetes. I mean, diabetes is an expensive disease.
Yes, quite. No, it's a deep, dark, descending path unless it's caught early and addressed appropriately. So thanks for that oversight on that. And, being a diabetes educator also speaks to your teaching background. You've had extensive teaching background that you could share some more about.
Yes, I have. It all started as a graduate student where my professor, and this again was kind of a serendipitous event, my professor got sick and basically called on me to teach his class for a week. And I did. I taught the class while he was out. And I really enjoyed the experience. And when I graduated, which was back in '95, it was just a year later, 1996, that I came here to Florida. And the college, St. Pete College, was right up the road, and I just decided to take a ride over there at the time and introduce myself and let them know that I was available as an instructor. And it just so happened that they had somebody leave, and the semester had actually already started, Paula, and so I slipped right in, I think by week 2, and that was the fall of 1996. Yes, wow. It was the fall of '96, and I've just been teaching ever since. So I've taught. I went on to teach for St. Pete College until the year 2000. Then I picked it up at the University of Tampa, because the same gal that first introduced me, Christine Miller, the lovely Christine Miller, who introduced me to functional nutrition, functional medicine way back in the year 2000, was offered a teaching position at University of Tampa that she could not take. So she called me and she asked me if I could pick it up, and I said, sure. And I've been with the University of Tampa ever since. So another interesting coincidence. But and I've taught a couple of different types of classes at the University of Tampa: nutrition, supplements, clinical nutrition for nurses. But this is just a slide that shows you some of the different places that I have been invited to either come in as adjunct or guest lecture. And they're both online and on-site. And I have actually done a few guest lectures for Hawthorn as well, which was wonderful. So yeah, this is my background in teaching.
That was a good knock on the door. I think they were very
Yeah.
grateful that you were able to slip right in there and be so qualified. Well, that should lead to, you've given a number of presentations over the years, and I'm wondering about those, but really, how do you get invited to some of these?
Yeah, these, I'm going to just put a few of these up there. It's a, it's, you know, it starts off as, well, let's see, a lot of it had to do with Kathy Swift, who I met many years ago. And the day we hit it up, we met, we absolutely hit it off. She's a hoot. She's just lovely. She's funny as heck. And we really enjoy one another. And she invited me to speak on this, national platform. She had seen some of my work,
Mhm.
and I did. And so I had an opportunity to speak for the National Food as Medicine conference on 3 different occasions. And what ended up happening was different individuals who heard me speak at that one then invited me to come speak at a variety of others. And
Okay.
I'm not remembering the exact order, but it was basically a situation where, one quote unquote, one gig leads to another,
Okay.
right? So you give a presentation, somebody hears you, and then they invite you to speak at their organization or their symposium, and that's kind of how it happened. And
Mhm.
so I have presented on a variety of topics, including detox and genomics and metabolic syndrome and leaky gut. And I tell you, it's a lot of work. These presentations, not just putting together the slides, but making sure your information is evidence-based. People are of all backgrounds are listening,
Mhm.
and we're sticklers about making sure all our slides are referenced properly.
Certainly.
And oh yeah, because if they're not, it will come back to and haunt you. And so
Mhm.
we learn very, very early, uh, you never make anything up, and if you don't know, you say so, and you make sure your information is based in some kind, even if it's just empirical data, an N of 1, clinical evidence, or research, but it does need to be referenced.
I agree. Absolutely. Well, Food is Medicine also is such a great conference, and it sure has opened doors for you. And it's where I met Kathy Swift initially, a number of
Mm.
years back. So, all right.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
from there, from giving presentations, you've also done a lot of writing. I'm really
Yep.
impressed with all the technical and scientific writing you've done. And so, who have you written for and published with? And and I wonder, did you submit a draft proposal for each of these? How did they come about too?
Well, so before I started at Hawthorn, I was at a different university, kind of experimenting with the possibility of more graduate school.
Mhm.
But I wasn't a matriculating student. I was
Mhm.
taking a course, and I had to write a paper on nutritional genomics for gastroenterology. And it was a heck of a paper, and Liz Lipsky was involved in peer reviewing that along with a few others. That paper eventually evolved into the chapter for Jerry Mullen. Jerry Mullen needed a chapter and on that subject, and asked Kathy if she'd write it. Kathy was in a bind and couldn't write it, and said, "Sheila, you got to help me write the chapter." I said, "Kath, I have the chapter written. I can rewrite it to make it appropriate for the text." So truth be told, that's how that chapter came about, and Jerry was tickled. And so I sent the draft to Jerry, and it was peer reviewed, it was edited, and then it was published in the Integrative Gastroenterology textbook. Um, and then, of course, I wrote a couple of chapters for Kathy Mahan's book,
Mhm.
textbook, that happened because I was giving a talk and she was at the talk and she enjoyed the presentation, and she said, Sheila, and this was just after I had graduated from Hawthorn. I had just finished writing my dissertation, Paula, and I was really in research mode, right? And she came running up to me, I mean, literally maybe 3 months after I finished up with Hawthorn, and she said, Sheila, you're still in research mode. I am begging you to write this chapter. If you don't do it now, you'll never do it. You're in research mode. You got to write the chapter. And it was a chapter all about thyroid disease, thyroid, adrenal, and various endocrine disorders. And I said, okay. I had a couple of months to take a breath after I graduated from Hawthorn, because I finished up around May, June of 2010. And by October, I was writing this really intense chapter, along with components of about 4 other chapters. And she was right. It was good that I wrote it at that time, because I was in research mode, and I was able to send her this draft. And of course, it was peer reviewed as obviously for a textbook. And then of course, every couple of years they update that. So I provide them with the updated version. So that's kind of how that came about. And you know, but I have written for years, newspaper articles, web articles, you know, for journals, magazines. So I, you know, I have fairly decent writing experience, but these were the 2 that chapters that I wrote for textbooks.
It's just a great development, and these are 2 fabulous, you know, books.
Yes.
I'm glad that you really put these up, because I want people to know about these books too.
Yeah. Well,
Certainly to
and
be able
Dr.
to read your
Mullen.
chapters, but just in general.
Yeah, he puts out some amazing work. I mean, this is not his only work, so I would encourage anybody to check out Dr. Jerry Mullen's work.
Me too.
Yeah.
So you've done quite a bit of media work as well, Sheila, and that'll certainly be interesting to hear more about.
I have. Well, you know, that also started way back in '96. I can't even remember how I was contacted. Maybe I did a talk or something, and some news channel called me. And, you know, the thing about the news channels is that they want you, and they want you now. You know, are you available in 2 hours? So, you know, I had that flexibility. So, you know, one media interview sort of led to another, and I was very careful in keeping track of them all, you know, meaning I'd recorded them and kind of created my own little portfolio. So I literally have recordings of everyone I've ever did since, I think, '96. So I've done media interviews for, gosh, CBS, News Channel 10, NBC, News Channel 8, ABC, News Channel 28, Fox 13, Good Day Tampa Bay, NBC, radio shows I've done. But of course, this was, you know, throughout many, many years. But my favorite television media gig was this one. It was News Channel 10, it was CBS, News Channel 10 for us, our local network here in my area. And it was, they named it actually, Take 5 with Dr. Dean. And it was about a 5-minute section, which, Paula, you would not believe how much time that is when you have to fill that with information. But at the same time, it comes and goes so quickly. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy. So Take 5 with Dr. Dean, which was my segment, aired every Friday for about 2 years, from 2012 through 2014, which I was not paid for, but it led to so many referrals that it paid for itself. And it was an amazing experience as well. And it was a blast. It was really a blast. So Take 5 with Dr. Dean was, yeah, my thing for a couple of years.
Beautiful. And I bet that led to many other interviews that you've done over the years.
Oh, yes. Many interviews, for countless interviews for, especially for magazine articles, which I, you know, don't have pictures of all of those, but what I do have, and what I would encourage all of you to keep for yourselves, is some kind of portfolio, whether it's a digital portfolio or just a good old-fashioned hard, you know, copies of anything that you've published, or even thank you letters. Whenever you do a presentation, try to ask for some kind of thank you letter, really, because it's documentation of your work. And these portfolios are what I use to then go on to land other presentations and other opportunities. So I I did this recently. This is my more recent one. So this is Siobhan and Sarna. Siobhan was, which I can now disclose, was actually my patient from years ago. She's lovely, and she happened to be a television personality for a television show that sells products on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And she made it her personal mission to, based on her own personal health issues, to launch her own SIBO summits. SIBO standing for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is amazing. I mean, Siobhan is phenomenal. And so she naturally came to me to assist her in this process, which I did the best that I could, but then try to put her in touch with the true SIBO experts out there. And she did. She contacted all of them, and she has probably already completed, successfully maybe 4 or 5 summits with all kinds of interviews with all kinds of experts in the field. And so this is just a snapshot of an interview that she did right there in my kitchen. And so that was a lot of fun.
It's amazing how SIBO has come to such prominence, and so it speaks to how many different practitioners she has that are experts in it. So
yeah. Yes.
Any others interviews?
Yeah, and then this is just a snapshot of my most recent interview. Just this past January of 2020, I was asked to do an interview, a magazine, for the purposes of publishing in Element, which is the official publication for Emerson Ecologics. Emerson Ecologics is a massive dispensary of many different brands of dietary supplements, and they put out a monthly publication called Element, which is really fantastic. It's one of my favorites. And I was interviewed in January's edition on the ketogenic diet. So this is just...
It's a great piece. It's a great piece that you did, and it's very prominent. And you go to the Emerson site, you're right there.
Yes, it was the article of the month, and so I was really excited to participate in that as well. Yeah.
I think that was there anything else on your interviews?
I mean, basically just that I conducted many magazine interviews, and eventually, and as far as publications concerned, eventually, I should say, early on in my career, in my 20s, I was very interested in the area of sports nutrition. Now, truth be told, guys, it was before I realized that sports nutrition didn't pay my bills. And so,
Right.
but I did really enjoy working with athletes, and
This was early in your career, right?
This was early in my career. Yeah, this is a little yeah, it's a little out of order, but I put it here just because it wasn't really a major part of my career, but it was for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And again, what happened was I was asked to be the official nutritionist for the Ironman Institute, one of the offices here in Palm Harbor, Florida. So I was on board as their nutritionist. They did these executive exams. Basically, they marketed to executives to come in and do these high-end exams and meet with different healthcare professionals, and including myself. And eventually Ironman got a hold of my name, and they asked me to write a book on just, on the basics of nutrition for triathlons. Now, I am personally not a triathlete, but I did have an extensive understanding of nutrition or sports nutrition. So I wrote the book, and it was published by Meyer and Meyer Sport. And I remember walking to my mailbox in 2004 and getting my very first copy of my own book, and feeling really, really excited about all of that. And of course, along the way, I did quite a bit of consulting for the Tampa Bay Bucks back in the year 2000, and the Philadelphia Phillies. I was a regular columnist for a couple of years, actually, for IronmanLive.com, which is no longer. I don't know exactly when they discontinued that column, but back in the early 2000s. So yeah, so lots of writing experience, a lot of fun.
Well, certainly from your beginnings here in sports nutrition, you've done a lot of work, you've gained a lot of recognition, and I know that you've won a few awards. So please share what they were, what they are, and really, I want to know what it's like to be so honored to receive
Oh,
these.
well, the thing is, there are many, many people that were a part of my journey. So I think we all know that no one does this alone, right? But yes, what happened was back in 2010, the practice group known as DIFM or DIFM, the Dietitians in Integrative and Functional Medicine, they're a practice group, or you could call them a specialty group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and really the only group that's very functional medicine oriented, because you probably know, and most of you out there may know, that the Academy is a fairly traditional organization for dietitians. And so this practice group, which is maybe the second largest or largest practice group of the Academy, has really grown. And so in 2010, yes, I was really honored with the Excellence in Practice Award by DIFM, and then later an organization known as the Dietitians for Professional Integrity, or DFPI, gave me the Distinguished Dietitian Award. And then most recently, this past October 2019, I was actually shocked when I was awarded the Visionary Award. And it was really extraordinary. And I was humbled, because, the group of people, my colleagues, they're so accomplished and so amazing. And so I felt really honored and paid homage to every one of them that I could think of, including Liz Lipsky and Hawthorn University, for being a part of my path, of the trajectory that led me to where I am. Because of course, no one does it alone.
No one does it alone,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful testament. And I'm also thrilled, for this category, the Dietitians Integrative and Functional Medicine group. And last I heard, there was at least 5,000 members now and growing.
Almost, yeah, not quite, but they're very close. And it's a wonderful testament to the fact that dietitians, there are a group of dietitians that are very interested in all of this. And it's a tough situation, because dietitians are typically pigeonholed as sort of conventionally trained healthcare professionals. And while that's true, there is a large group of them that really want the holistic approach. And so that's part of the reason why DIFM was formed so many years ago. Well, it was actually originally called NCC, Nutrition and Complementary Care, and then somewhere along the way, we renamed it to Dietitians in Integrative Functional Medicine, and they're out there doing wonderful things.
All right. I think it's time to talk about your Hawthorn experience. So I'm curious
Yes.
why you chose Hawthorn, and I certainly want to have you share about what it was like to be a doctoral student with us.
Absolutely. Well, earning a doctorate degree, as I mentioned earlier, was something that I had always wanted to do since I was young. And so it wasn't anything that I had to think through very hard. It was really just a matter of timing. And also, as I mentioned, it was Liz Lipsky who introduced me to Hawthorn. So I'm forever indebted to her for that. That evening when we sat down and I was sharing with her my dreams and my hopes. And she said, you ought to really consider going to Hawthorn. And I said, Hawthorn? What's that all about? And so, right. And so, but I was wanting to achieve this sense of fulfillment. And Paula, I wanted more, as I wrote out here for everybody, I wanted more than a certificate course. I wanted a formal degree, and I wanted to find a way to increase my level of proficiency in a systemized and organized way, which is exactly what the Hawthorn program offered. The DSC, the Doctorate of Science program, allowed me the opportunity to be exposed to an incredible amount of resources in each of the modules, all those books, the papers, and also audio and video resources. So I really appreciated the approach to the learning. It really worked for me. My intention was to take all the information I learned, and I wanted to apply 100% of it to my clinical practice. Indeed, I was able to take almost all of my PowerPoint presentations that I had done for class and for module homework, so to speak, repurpose them, and then get paid to present them a few times over. So not only did I have the opportunity to speak around the country, but I also made my money back from the investment, right, in my tuition, from having to pay tuition for the modules. Additionally, because of the presentations and in being heard from others, I was invited to come speak to many other groups all over the country, including Florida, Hawaii, Alaska, Massachusetts, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, New York, California state associations, and as we mentioned earlier, Food is Medicine, and also the Institute for Functional Medicine's annual international symposium.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
yep.
Another piece of your Hawthorn experience would have been your dissertation, but you're leading up to that, so I'll let you continue.
Yes, that's true. It was a big part of it, and I'm absolutely going to chat a little bit about that. I did want to mention that if it wasn't for my Hawthorn experience, I may not have ever even known or read books or research by names like Theo Colburn or Fred von Saal or Mike Schmidt, Sidney Baker, Michael Pollan, Marion Nestle, who I knew of Marion Nestle, but still, I don't know that I would have had the time or created the time. Jim Wilson, Sherry Tenpenny, if not for the Hawthorn program. It was so systematic. It was, for me, it really worked for me. So here are just a couple of pointers that I wanted to mention. I'd suggest, I did make this recommendation, suggested maybe removing one book from the reading list and adding more scientific papers. Now I do feel, because of all of this training, I'm definitely a better scientific and technical writer. I mean, remember, Paula, when I had finished the program in May of 2010, I gave the talk for a state association, and it was in, let's see, it was in Colorado in October, and that's where Kathy Mahan, the editor of the textbook, came to me and asked me to write the chapter. If I had never gone through that experience, I'm not sure that I would have had the interest or the ability to write that chapter. So no doubt more confidence, a better understanding, more expeditious. The experiential exercise of case write-ups were an excellent experience, and I wanted to mention that for anyone who's thinking about going through the DSC program. I personally thought that was excellent. I love the fact that they had us create these annotated bibliographies, which, if you're not sure what that means, it's basically not just writing up a reference list, but it's where you have the reference plus a small, summary of it. So I still go back to those annotated bibliographies, and I mean, think about it. I mean, here we are 10 years later, and it just makes it so much easier to remember. I mean, there's just so many resources. I loved Module 803 GI, 808 Neuro. The only reason 806 or cardiovascular was my least favorite is because I really wasn't interacting with a lot of cardiovascular patients at the time, so I didn't have a lot of application for it, but it was still a fantastic module. The one I have to say that I probably learned the most from, just because of my own personal lack of understanding and knowledge at the time, was the very first module, which was brilliant that they made it the very first module, because talk about reeling me in. The Nutrition, Politics, and Policies, 801, was just amazing. I mean, talk about eye-opening, right? And this is happening in the year 2010. And so I'm just wowed by this. I mean, I'm just wowed. The only drawback to the program was there was not a lot of student interaction, but it was a very functional medicine oriented program, which is a massive strength, and you just don't get that these days. And so Hawthorn was an incredible, incredible experience. It was 100% worth it. As I mentioned, I made, every dime that I invested in my training through Hawthorn, I made back and then some. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned earlier, yes, my dissertation, this is just a screenshot of the cover page of my my dissertation. This was a hell of a project. This was a lot. It was, but
dissertations are meant to be comprehensive.
Exactly. It was. I mean, I did write a thesis for my master's degree, but as we know, dissertation has to be new material, and I appreciated the rigor that was involved, and I was very, very fortunate to be invited to come to a clinic to do some data mining out in Gig Harbor, Washington State, and which allowed me to create this incredible dissertation, which took quite a while to put together. And of course, Dr. Liz Lipsky was involved in assisting me. But Liz, she does not hover. She's not helicopter mom. She lets you. She gives you the tools. She lets you know she's there, but you're really on your own. And for me, that really worked for me. I don't particularly care to be micromanaged, and so it was a really good approach for me. I like to be able to be given the latitude to kind of explore on my own, but Liz was always there when I needed her, and she was quick to respond. So it was a good match for me at the time.
I'm glad to hear it. And if you had needed more help, we'd have been there for you. Dr. Lipsky would have been there. Hawthorn would have been there to be supportive.
Yes. There was actually quite a few people that came to my assistance when I needed. I mean, it was right about that time that I happened to just bump into a friend of the family who came over for dinner, and he happened to be a statistician and ultimately helped me with my statistics. And then when I was done, he moved out of the state. So it was like, it was just amazing, just like the heavens opened up and out he dropped and helped me. And then when I was done, he left. It was amazing.
Little angel popped in
the universe provides.
Yes, absolutely. What a beautiful share around Hawthorn and how it supported you and in your professional development as well. Sheila, I'm certainly that nutrition isn't all of your life and that you have other interests, and it'd be a pleasure to hear some of that too.
Of course. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my other interests. I would say music is at the top of the list. I love to play the piano. I am an amateur musician, but I play it quite a bit. And this is a picture of me this past Christmas. I was out in New York City, and I happened to walk across down in the midst of downtown a store selling Steinway pianos, and I ran inside and instantly started fooling around with the keys, and they allowed me. I have actually been playing the drums for years now, and I play in many open jams. So I love music. It's really a wonderful experience. I enjoy traveling, and more recently, I've had that opportunity because, as you know, with the children being so young, the full-time practice, there's not a ton of time for that. But then more recently, both of my kids went off to college, and they actually both graduated. And so I've had more time to travel to all kinds, many places, and both here in the United States and, of course, abroad. London and Paris and Venice being my most recent excursion. And some of you may or may not be familiar with the Bahai Faith. I'm a member of the Bahai Faith, and this is a picture that I took right off my iPhone in March of 2018. I went and visited the Bahai World Center in Haifa, Israel, and these are just some beautiful pictures that I took. Yeah, these iPhones are just amazing. And so I thought I would share a little bit about that. The Bahai Faith is it's a world faith, a world religion dedicated to the unification of humankind, the equality of men and women, the elimination of all forms of prejudice, the harmony of science and religion, and the independent investigation of truth, to name just a few, meaning we are encouraged to not blindly follow our ancestors and sort of make our own decisions. And the reason I mention this today is because I feel that it is truly, in large part, because of my faith as a Baha'i that led me to my search for new ways to become, a better servant, a better educator, a better practitioner, that I really believe ultimately led me on the functional medicine path and this new educational process that it really inspired me to strive for higher education, which that ultimately transformed my entire practice and my career, as I've tried to express, which led to so many opportunities, the university teaching, the scientific and technical writing, the television, the media, my speaking opportunities, and of course, brought about the creation of IFNA, the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy.
Just really beautifully described here. And, when I think of Bahai and you, it's full of holism, and that is certainly
Yes.
your path. It's functional, it's holism, and just beautiful. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for this.
Well, I do want to, just occurred to me that that same night, Paula, that Liz and I were chatting about Hawthorn,
Mhm.
we talked about a lot of different things, and I think somehow the Bahai Faith came up. I can't remember how, and she mentioned that she actually got married at the National Bahai House of Worship in Chicago, in Wilmette. And I think that's what led us to start talking about, our lives, our dreams, and eventually I opened up to her about what I wanted to do, and that's how she started telling me about Hawthorn.
Serendipitous, right?
Serendipitous. I have to mention my garden, though. It's just a little square foot garden, but I do have a little bit of romaine going on. I don't know if you could see my cilantro. I've got
I do.
chocolate mint and cinnamon basil in there, and it's a little thing, but I'm proud of it.
It's
And
glorious.
thank you. And just another colorful picture that, again, I took off this impressive iPhone of some of the flower pots. I have many flower pots in the backyard area, but I enjoy that very, very much, tinkering around with all the flowers here in beautiful Florida. I'll tell you a little bit about my kitties, who are not kitties anymore. My adult kids. I have two
Oh, look at
children.
them.
My kids, Emily and Nicholas. Emily just graduated from Emory University just this past May of 2019.
Congrats. That's a
Yep,
great
and
picture.
yeah, that was a good one. And my Nicholas just graduated from NYU just this past December of 2019, but his ceremony is going to be in May 2020, so we're really excited about that. It's hard to believe that I've got two kids that have graduated from college. It feels like they were just
No.
driving. So,
That was
so
a
yeah.
momentous in itself. Beautiful, beautiful accomplishments, all.
So
So,
yeah, the
50
50
years
year, I'm
serendipitous
50 years old,
journey.
so the 50-year serendipitous journey to me, here I am when I reflect back. I feel like the first 25 years of my life, this is a picture of me in 1995. I was 25 years old and I just graduated with my master's degree. And I feel like the first 25 years of my life were completely dedicated to my school and my studying. My kids were not born yet. And then the second 25 years of my life truly dedicated to my kids and my career. And now here I am, I'm 50 years old, and I feel like it's at this time in my life, it's really finally about living and loving with my partner, Stephen. This is Stephen, and wonderful, wonderful man. And so here I am.
Final words of encouragement. That's good.
Yes, yes. Well, I wanted to include this slide, this final slide, and just mention that, I feel like when you're working in a spirit of service, no matter how small you think your efforts may be, no matter how minor you may perceive your role, just know that you are contributing to the profession in an important and meaningful way that in a sense, so that in a sense is, for me, work is a form of worship. So never underestimate yourself. You never know what impact you've made on your patients, your colleagues, your students, or even your friends and family when you're working in that spirit of service. And when you find an area that you feel happy doing that makes your heart sing, then do more of it. Just get started. Just keep moving, ask questions, and for sure, invest in your continuing education because you're worth it. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
It certainly does. What great words of encouragement, Sheila, for nutrition students and emerging professionals who are looking to make a significant contribution to our profession. Very well said.
Thank you. Excellent. Yes.
And thank you for offering to have anybody contact you that
Yep.
wants to. And here's your contact information. And I'll
Yep.
say if anybody has any comments or questions for Dr. Sheila, now's a great time to post those.
And thank you for hanging out with me for so long. I took a little longer than I expected, but I appreciate everyone's patience.
Every word had value, Sheila. So just want to say Dr. Lipsky was able to join us today, and she said it's so great listening to your story, and that it was actually Ruth that connected you. So she
Oh,
said you were so unhappy at Rutgers program, and she thought you'd be happy with us here at Hawthorn University. And, so compliments there again to Dr. Lipsky and for you for making such great choices. And just bravo on the brilliance of your career at this point. You're so young in your professional career at this point.
oh,
So I am thrilled to know you, to have the honor of having you being a Hawthorn graduate, sharing this journey, and really look forward to what's going to come from you in the next little bit and continuing on from there.
well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
It's really been a pleasure for me, Sheila, and I hope you'll visit us again at Hawthorn and continue to share your good works. And I think I'll invite you to do a webinar on conducting research. I think you'd be really good at it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. All right, everybody, I want to thank you for joining us and want you to know and help us spread the word that our next All About Alumni will meet back here again on Wednesday, March 5th. We'll be at 12 noon Pacific time. We'll go live with Ben Warren, who's a graduate from our unique Master of Science in Holistic Nutrition program. This is a combined master's and clinical training program, and Ben has a wonderful career. He's living in Australia at this time, so I'm excited to feature him next. I'll just say we've had so many fantastic Hawthorn University graduate presentations, so I hope you'll explore those. Dr. Dean's will be posted to our archived webinars on our website in just a few days. And while you're there, you'll have the opportunity to view the many others are there. You can see what program they're from. So if you're in that program or you're interested in one of our programs, from our website, you'll be able to listen to these insightful interviews that we offer you. Thank you again, Sheila. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live, and for those of you who are listening after the fact, for your interest in Hawthorn University. And until we meet again at our next All About Alumni or our Tuesday night webinar series, I want to wish you all the best of health and encourage you to take good care. It matters.